up, say?
I had my own moment this week, and I'll get into the response to that, but I had my own one where a young staff member here prepared a GPT that sort of analyzes all of our tendering pricing data and recommends a contractor, which is sort of one of the key things I do here. Like, it's sort of, Mr. Analysis comes in and plugs the holes based on experience. And I jokingly said, like, who the do you think you are? Like, you just done my job. This guy's a grad. But at the same time, I laughed it off and I said, well done. Like, great. So now I'll get involved in fine tuning it. Australia has the worst and most negative attitude to AI out of the top 40, which is unbelievable. So this country is unbelievably skeptical, basically nervous, fear, see the opportunity, and think that it's, basically at where you and I are at. We're at like 1%, the top 1% of how people think about AI and the positive nature on it. But interestingly, India, China, and some of these other countries, they're seeing the opportunity. Now, everyone else would have thought, well, no, that's a cheap labor destination. They're the first people that are going to be replaced. But interesting, the psyche of a country that's developing, that's literally coming out of the mud, they're looking at this and going, how can we leverage it? How exciting.
Welcome to Built to Scale, hosted by myself, Scott Wilcox from WBuild, where we craft some of the world's finest homes. And Matt Parrott from BuildPass, he's on a mission to build the world's smartest operating system for construction sites. We're two Aussie founders with global ambitions in business, technology, AI, and robotics. Every week, we're going to distill a broad set of intelligent insights into founder-driven takes that elevate your edge. Listen in to get our Aussie lens on the global playing field for anyone keen to stay ahead. Or in short, for those who refuse to be left behind.
Okay, g'day, Matty. Good to see you again on a Wednesday morning on the Built to Scale podcast. How have you been?
Going well, mate. Good to see you. It feels weird to have been in Melbourne for almost 2 weeks now rather than traveling. So feeling settled back in before I get back on a plane. So going well. How about you?
Great. I feel the same. We have run out of excuses if this is no good, because we're both in Melbourne in our offices. We've been in Melbourne for over a week or two. There haven't been public holidays. So we are at full strength today, as you would say, in a sporting team. So expecting great things. And in saying so, later in the show, I have some feedback for using AI. We've got some brutal podcast feedback, which will be exciting to go through in the Tool of the Week segment. And then soon, and quickly, I've got some feedback for you on your public presence.
Oh no! Here we go.
On your own personal brand, social media over the last week. I've got I appear to be looking at some things that are landing and things that aren't landing. Can you tell us a little bit about the Crocodile Dundee presentation? Because I knew you were going out there in Dallas or wherever you were to present, and I gave you some advice. I've since seen photos of Crocodile Dundee with your head on it, and I'm wondering what's happened.
Yeah, well, I mean, doing a talk in the heart of Texas with a crowd that you don't know, talking about AI to construction, it's always going to have its challenges. And so I was worried that my heavy Australian accent would be off-putting and people just wouldn't listen to the whole thing. So I wanted to get ahead of it. And when you think of what Americans know, and I ran this past our American team, who is the most iconic Australian that Americans know? And, well, There's Croc Dundee, but then there's Steve Irwin as well. So the second slide was basically apologizing for the fact that I sounded like Steve Irwin, and it had a photo of Steve Irwin with my head cropped on it, him popping out in a little meme saying crikey and showing the 16 hours that I'd flown. And I don't know, maybe it was the delivery, maybe it just didn't land. So I kind of had to move on from that pretty quickly to talking about my creds of why I should be talking about AI. So still trying to figure out how to get ahead of the Aussie accent over in the US.
I'll just lean into it, mate. I think they'll come around. I'm sure you delivered it perfectly. It was the crowd that's the issue. But
you're acting like sycophant GPT right now.
That's right. But something that did land personally with me was it was actually like the third photo of a reel for Build Pass. I did see a little meme of what appears to be the Build Pass product team coming to you with any great idea and just users saying, but does it have AI? Or what about AI? And I had a genuine lol. I was just like, I can imagine him doing it. And I can imagine my team saying similar things to me. And I don't even run an AI business, but
yeah. Well, I think we've both established that in our companies, we're the ones who get bullied the most. And that is okay. But it's true. Anything that comes across my desk, it's like, could that have been done with AI? Where's the AI? And you got to repeat these things. But yeah, that was quite a funny meme. I didn't know they were going to do that. They presented in a meeting and I also had a lol.
I'm going to print it in A4, old school style, and stick it on my office door. And just so everyone knows before they walk in, like, don't you be coming in here with some admin issue or some long-winded email. Has this been summarized? Could it be done with AI before you ask me a question?
100%.
Speaking of CEOs, have you seen America's smartest CEOs have been rated by, I'm sure now that this rating is so accurate, a very strong rating agency, and they've listed the top 15 most intelligent American CEOs. Have you seen it? And did you see who was on top?
Scotty, I haven't seen it. So why don't you tell me who's on top?
My man, number one, smartest CEO in the United States, Jensen Huang. They based it on linguistic analysis of vocabulary, sophistication, critical thinking, and more. The and more thing with him could go in any direction. So I just think that's another tick for him and me for I won't take the credit for spotting Jensen, but the bromance is real. He's now confirmed the smartest CEO. Just some of the other names on the list that I thought were interesting, which made the list make sense to me as well. To me, Hasabassis from Google DeepMind, number 3, which makes sense. Reed Hastings at 6 from Netflix, who I think is also a jet. Mark Andreessen at 10. We've got some issues with Mark to talk about later. And the guys from Stripe at 11, Sam Altman at 12, and Jamie Dimon from JP Morgan at 15. So the list to me seemed pretty good. There potentially is some anti-Elon sentiment there. But have you got any thoughts on some of those rankings?
Well, first of all, tinfoil hat on. The fact that this analysis was probably done by AI and the AI had to be trained on someone's chips, and whose chips was it trained on? The big J man. So who knows? Maybe the AI has been biased there. But I would say, what's that?
Sycophant chips.
Yeah, the sycophant chips. Yes, it's gone. This has gone a layer deeper than just the models. This is down to the chip level. No, I think it's a great list. My bromance is with Patrick Collison from Stripe. I think he's just the most well-read, articulate guy that's built an incredible company. I love his content. I love his book recommendations. So it makes sense that I'm a bit disappointed he's not in the top 10, but that makes sense that he's up there.
He's been pretty public lately as well. Across the podcast scene. I feel like in general, there's now two types of sort of the VCs, the venture capitalists seem to be all starting their own podcast because they've probably seen the success of the All In. And then the CEOs.
I thought you were going to say the built to scale.
Yes. Well, we're not VCs. We've got no money to invest, but we've gone the other way. We're the CEOs who have started a podcast. But what I would say is that the venture capitalists all seem to be starting podcasts that then the CEOs, the big CEOs are going on as guests. That seems to be the new paradigm in the US. And I've noticed the guys from Stripe everywhere over the last few months. So they're making what seems like a full court press, potentially around or something going on there.
I think that it just goes to show how powerful, personal brand, founder brand, whatever you want to call it, is. And a quick example from me recently, literally yesterday, I, over the course of building Build Pass, have added a lot of people on LinkedIn and tried to connect with a lot of people. And literally a guy reached out to me yesterday who said, hey, I've been following your journey. This is a guy who works in construction. I connected with him, tried to sell to him like 3 years ago. I've been following it. I've now moved over to Austin, Texas, and I'm working for a general contractor over there. I've got heaps of connections for you. And to me, it was just a great example of building your network, but also keeping in front of people. Like this guy who I didn't even know has been following my and Build Pass's journey because of the content that I've been putting out. And it's like an investment in the future. Every piece of good content, bad content can work the other way. And maybe we need to be careful of that with what we're doing here. But you are starting to build a story and you're just keeping in front of people. Well, every time that I put a LinkedIn post out, someone who's been meaning to chat with me or that I've been trying to get in contact with will often respond because they get reminded. And so I think that we're just seeing that, and podcasts are a great way of doing that because you can get out there. One of the reasons we started this that I don't know if we've actually shared is that we wanted a medium to just talk about things in long form, to really present how we're thinking, and so that people don't have to just see a quick post or a quick short on a spicy opinion. They can actually sit down on the way to work, whatever it is, and really get into detailed conversation or opinion on something. So I think that trend is, it's certainly there, and that's probably the reason why.
Yeah, I mean, you're sort of building social capital and trust and transparency. I think every brand wants to build trust and transparency, and I think the more public speaking you do, the more people can digest in their own time frame. They can get to know you in their comfort of their own home when they've got the time, and that's upstream and downstream. That's potential staff, existing staff, potential clients, existing clients, any type of partners can consume that in their own time. But like capturing data to then leverage as AI, you need content to leverage as the trust building exercise. So I agree with you. I haven't had as many quick wins and feed and new connections from my public presence probably as you have, but at the same time I look at it as just data. It's there, it'll be leveraged at some point, and doing it with you has been fun. And then what half of it make it's fun is taking the piss a little bit, and the last bit of person I think just needs that last bit of feedback in the theme of the show so far about feedback and where it's going to go later is the man listed in the top 10 just in front of your candidate from Stripe, Patrick, is Mark Andreessen, who's done a lot of public work lately, is the key principal of Andreessen Horowitz, who is a wildly successful, what would you call it, venture capital firm, but previously almost takes credit for almost creating the internet or making the internet, a retail experience in his early days in software. But as a bit of navel gazing, which we like to point out on this show, Mark went on a podcast and basically said AI will do everything, but VCs will be one of the last jobs to be done by humans. And there is a ripping meme of a bald guy like Mark saying AI will replace everyone except me. And I think he hasn't had his moment, potentially because he's so bloody successful. I'm not sure how the key principals of VC firms that are worth billions of dollars and they just have some minions doing research for them, I'm not sure how much feedback they get from the brutal founder GPT compared to the sycophant GPT being their staff. So do you think Mark might be out of touch by suggesting that VCs are the last job to go?
Oh, 100%. But what I think is funny here is it's like this almost a confirmation bias, or there's probably some bias that's more descriptive of that, but whereby something that you do and you highly respect and you feel like you've built up a certain skill set in, you're naturally going to want to deny the fact that AI could do some of that. And I've had conversations like this with people who are in finance saying they invest in the public stock market, saying things like, no, but AI wouldn't be able to do what I do because I listen to the speeches and the announcements, and I make a decision on where I'm going to invest based on some taste and some feel. And yeah, that might be true, but you can teach AI to do that. So this is, we've talked about this a lot, the whole idea of where will humans excel and the difference between what is a hard data-driven decision that AI would be very good at versus human taste. And look, I think that is right to say that you build up a certain gut feel, but you can also teach AI things. You can take the reasons that you chose something or your taste in something and you can start to teach AI that. So it's just a funny concept. And I think we're seeing it here from Mark. Look, I think that the memes and stuff, people have certainly taken their moment on this. I did watch it back. He sort of said it as an offhanded comment. But I reckon let's grill him because, he's not going to see this. And if he does, that'd be great.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I had my own moment this week, and I'll get into the response to that, but I had my own one where a young staff member here prepared a GPT that sort of analyzes all of our tendering pricing data and recommends a contractor, which is sort of one of the key things I do here. Like, it's sort of, Mr. Analysis comes in and plugs the holes based on experience. And I jokingly said, like, who the do you think you are? Like, you just done my job. This guy's a grad. But at the same time, I laughed it off and I said, well done. Like, great. So now I'll get involved in fine tuning it. But I think we've said it here before. I mean, ASI, I think quantum computing and ASI, which is, so quantum computing is this giant leap forward in compute, based on, I suppose, quantum physics. And ASI being artificial superintelligence, when AI is better than us at everything, every human and everything. I think they're both inevitable. So once you have the mental unlock of I'm special to my family and my friends, but my potential skill set in my career is everyone will have something that's better than them. So then it's about leveraging those tools that we've spoken about, capture your data, leverage the tools, leverage yourself, improve yourself. But if you're sitting back while robots are doing brain surgery and driving cars around autonomously, and you think that your little thing at work is untouchable, you are wrong. So anyway, there's some feedback for everyone else after giving it some to ourselves.
Yeah, agree. And a bit of feedback for you, Scotty. We talked about on a previous pod, you dipping your toes into the coding world and building a website for one of your businesses, Elysium. And
that's a generous term.
You prompted a website.
The code. Yeah.
You prompted it using a tool called Lovable, which we both think is really good. But I must say that Lovable isn't quite there yet. I was on a podcast yesterday. I dropped Built to Scale because we needed all the support that we can get, and mentioned I was doing it with you. And he'd seen your website. He said the W Build website is incredible. So that 5 figures that you dropped on getting that built is not wasted yet. Maybe in 6 months you'll be able to one-shot that with a prompt. But you can sleep well at night that was money well spent for now.
Is that also because he saw then the Elysium website that I did on Lovable? And he
said, yeah. He said the baseline was so
10
poor.
grand. He said the 10 grand well spent.
Yeah.
Potentially look at doing that for Elysium. Very good. All right. Well, that was a great feedback session. I feel better, potentially. Let's jump into some AI news, which is our big hitting zone here. And I would love to kick things off with some really exciting news, actually. So I only released in the last 48 hours something that anyone who listens knows is after the fires in LA over sort of the Christmas period and January period, we've fast-tracked technology-based home automation, design, build and live home automation business, Elysium, the technology side of our W Build business. We fast tracked that to get involved in the rebuild in LA. And one of the things that I think you've gone through as well is when you're trying to be innovative, to do it in your own country is one thing. To sort of have the courage to take that to the US, which is sort of the capital of innovation, and try and tell them that they don't know how to do something well, you can do it better, is a big leap mentally. And some exciting news is that the Aussie AI company called Archistar, which basically what Archistar do is they can sort of optimize on any block. They take into account all of the, any block of land, all of the planning rules and laws and regulations, and quickly with AI can tell you what size building you can build, and also then analyze potentially an architectural design and tell you if it fits within those parameters. So the biggest roadblock in the LA rebuild was always going to be the red tape. How do we stop this 1 and 2 year process of going to all these departments and having planning approvals? So the city of LA, Gav Newsom's released this, Rick Caruso from Steadfast, who's enormous over there in terms of this rebuild and the political capital that he carries, both of them have gone public, and then Archistar have gone public themselves with the fact that they have been picked as the technology partner to fixing the biggest red tape solution in front of rebuilding after the fires. And I just think for me, that's one, amazing. Even if it wasn't Aussie, it would be fantastic. They've lent into technology at the start of the workflow, which is getting approvals before we even start building. And then two, a little small Aussie business has got in the front of the queue and signed a deal with City of LA.
It's amazing. And what I really like about this is that we've seen in the last couple of years a lot of companies pop up riding the AI wave. But AI isn't new. As we've talked about before, people have been using AI and machine learning for a long time. And so even though we hear all the headlines of tools like Cursor and Lovable, these developer tools that have gone from 0 to 100 million in recurring revenue in record time because of the consumer interest, it's really cool to see a company that has been doing AI work and machine learning work for a long time that's backed on really innovative technology. Quick bit of information about Archistar. I don't actually know them personally, but I have seen them at conferences and other things. And so I've looked at the company, founded in 2010 by Dr. Benjamin Corey. He was in the space. He was actually teaching architecture and generative design to students and the community. And then the platform was born in 2018. They've been using AI and machine learning. And what's really impressive is they have, I suspect, managed to keep up with the pace. So they would have looked at the advancements in AI technology and kept building that into the platform such that all of the work that they have done in the past is being leveraged. They've got a good foundation and now they're accelerating and they have become the standard. And that's why they've been able to sign a deal with the City of LA. So yeah, it's awesome to see. The fact that it's an Aussie company is great. And we need more of these shining lights. We need more of, the Canvas of the world. It started in Australia, taking over the world, because we do have a really innovative country. Well, we've got a few innovative people, probably not enough. And I would love to see this to be a success. And hopefully there's more and more Aussie companies having success in the US and globally.
Yeah, I think it also shines a light on Australia's property. Property is ingrained in our culture and, an enormous amount of our, not GDP, but just where our capital goes. And then also, so I think prop tech is something, and I don't know if was it you came from real estate? Mm-hmm. Did you come from realestate.com? So another great technical platform that I think is actually better than the US ones. Like whenever I go on Zillow or something, it's very fragmented and hard to use and doesn't give the proper information. So realestate.com.au is, amazing for anyone that's looking for property in terms of its user experience information. And then Contech, which is sort of, I suppose, the space that you're in, we had Basecamp like a long time ago that turned into an enormous business. So I just think in general, pop tech and Contech are spaces where we seem to shine and where a lot of our focus goes as a country. So which is then spitting out innovative businesses like Build Pass, like us at a smaller scale. And then, a business like this that we're just referring to Archistar, it reinforces for me and then hopefully for you as well. And we're not making it all about us here, but we are at the cutting edge in the way we think. In our other areas, we might not be in this country, but when it comes to these specific spaces around property and construction and things like that, I think this country really is at the cutting edge. And so then it gives you that confidence to then go export that internationally.
And the other success story in construction tech being Aconex, who sold out to Oracle probably 6 or 7 years ago now for 1.6 billion. Another success story coming out of Australia. So totally agree. The prop tech scene, the construction tech scene here in Australia is something that we're good at, and we should be exporting that. We should be taking any of the technology that we've got over here and taking it to the biggest stage in the planet, which is the US.
Agree. And what are our good friends in AI news? What are our good friends at OpenAI up to this week? We seem to we could have an OpenAI segment because they get a mention every week, and fair play to them. They are the sun that the world operates around, I think, in AI. So what are they up to?
All hail Sam Altman. So we actually briefly mentioned this last week because the news of a potential acquisition of OpenAI acquiring Windsurf popped up just before last week's episode. It's now been confirmed. So as a reminder, what Windsurf is, it's essentially a coding platform in that category that I was just talking a bit of about before, but it's a coding platform. It helps developers, rather than having to write code themselves to create software, they can use AI to help. They can use prompts. It's really good. It's not the most popular one by, say, revenue or brand. The most popular one is Cursor, who has a $9 billion valuation. Windsurf just has a measly $3 billion valuation at the time of acquisition. But apparently the technology is potentially a little bit better, and that's why OpenAI targeted them, if it wasn't just for the valuation difference. So to see this getting completed, I think really reconfirms OpenAI's strategy that they want to own the consumer layer of AI end to end. They've got ChatGPT. That is the best brand out there, even though, you know, you could argue that things like Gemini and Claude are just as good now, but they've got the brand, and they're basically saying that any time that a retail user or a consumer is going to be using AI, they want to own that. They want to vertically integrate everything. And this is just the next step, because they're now will hopefully own a whole part of the workflow in developers. So this is software developers. So it'll be interesting to see what they do next. They're obviously cashed up now. They've just, I think it's 40 billion they're raising or have raised at a $300 billion valuation. So they could literally just go to the bank and get out the notes and give the $3 billion to the Windsurf team and integrate it. So it was pretty cool to see that actually get completed, which, without getting political, is good to see that these types of acquisitions are happening again in the US. They weren't happening under previous leadership. And I think this is really important because, like we said, this only benefits the consumer. And to see, what I like about acquisitions is not just seeing founders get rich, but it shows that there is an off-ramp for VCs to get their money as well. And when VCs have an off-ramp to cash out of a business, it means that they can raise more money, they can put more money into startups, and that's what fuels the ecosystem. If we don't have these exits, like Windsurf selling to OpenAI, it really affects the whole ecosystem. You don't have people putting money in, they can't get their returns out, and then we don't see as much innovation. So I was really happy to see this go through, and it'll be interesting to see how OpenAI integrates this into the rest of their products.
Yeah, there's so many things that excite me, not about this, but in general about the OpenAI movement. So I spoke last week about, I think they need to can we're all just here for humanity and AGI, and like they're closed. They're closed. So they might be here for AGI, but they want to, I suppose, dominate or enjoy the financial returns of that. It's not some, charity as they originally set up. But what's really cool is they want to be the Apple of AI. They, like you said, they want to vertically integrate and they want to dominate the user experience. They are doing that. And I really like the acquisition playbook of growth compared to the pretend to just do it, like the Microsoft version is copy it, make it worse, sell it for free, throw it in the bundle, and then sort of kill off the innovation. And then we all end up with like these average things in the Microsoft bundle. Whereas the other two ways that I really enjoyed was sort of Google's rise by acquiring YouTube and making that excellent and bolting that into their ecosystem. And DeepMind has like the lower, longer tail, I suppose, J curve of that's now really kicking in and becoming a great tool. And then also Meta buying Instagram, buying WhatsApp, as opposed to just doing crap versions of them. So I really like the idea of them being this, wanting to own the AI space, but then doing it properly by grabbing these great businesses, acquiring them, bolting them in, leveraging their internal ecosystem and tools, and then giving us the top end experience, not a cheaper and crapper version of that experience that then sort of kills off that small company as well. And then we all just sell for less. So
yeah.
in
it's
general,
going to depend how they integrate it. Like, the looking at acquisitions is really interesting. I agree with you that buying a best in breed technology is a smart play in most scenarios. Some businesses do it well. Some don't even do it at all. Like, you look at Elon, he doesn't buy stuff. He just wants to build. He's a builder. So he will go and build stuff. But I think this is a smart move from OpenAI. Another company that flies under the radar as having done this really well is Canva. So the big one that we would have seen almost 12 months ago now was buying Leonardo AI, which was very good at image generation and maybe video as well, but deeply technical business, Aussie business. And they went and picked that up for the technology. So when you look at acquiring another business will typically look for three things. You're either buying technology, you're buying revenue in customers, and maybe I'll throw brand in there as well, or you're buying team. Ideally, you're buying all three rather than just one or two. And I would say with this acquisition, OpenAI buying Windsurf, they have bought great technology. That was probably the main reason. Then I would say the second reason that they've bought it is a team. When you've got a really good technology, if the team is aligned, and there'll be some really high quality engineers in there, they'll probably fit really well into the OpenAI ecosystem. So they've got that as well. And then it had strong revenue. That's probably less so, and it's got a decent brand. So I think it's a really smart acquisition. But I agree with you that depending on what the business is, you're probably often better to buy the best in class product rather than just trying to rebuild it, especially when it's core. I think that is so true of something like WhatsApp. Everyone says, oh, it's just a messenger. How hard could it be to build? Building really slick chat is actually super difficult. The technology in WhatsApp is amazing, and the bar is so high. If there is a few milliseconds of latency, or if there's any potential error in it, you lose complete trust to the user. So I think that buying technology and buying best in breed is a really smart thing.
Well, the data that they've captured from WhatsApp at Meta is unbelievable. Like, as a data play, it was, and giving it to everyone for free was unbelievable. I suppose that you mentioned Elon there as well in terms of building everything himself. I think, if I was to have an Elon rant, I'm just the biggest fan. And I think half the world is getting caught up in the politics with him, and they're losing the forest through the trees of what is actually going on here. So if you were a massive lefty and you cared about sustainability, that man's done more for sustainability than almost any single human on the planet. Forgotten. Let's torch his cars. Let's torch Teslas. Like, imagine burning electrical cars as a lefty. Like, honestly, serious. And whether you hate Trump, hate what he's doing, trying to make governments more efficient and doing it with a bunch of cracked 20-year-olds who are working 15-hour days basically for free to make payment systems. They're just building a payment system so that the US has an invoice number and a reason for payment next to every payment that goes out. Like, at what point could you argue that that's not required, right? Is he the best deliverer of messages? Absolutely not. Like, bad communicator, like awkward, doesn't know how to communicate. And when you mess with things like government, you need far more planning and communication, because I think even with the tariff stuff like Trump, they've thrown the world into like a bit of a spin, because the US appears to be operating like a startup at the moment where they publish and then iterate, and government is really never iterate, never innovate, and then just publish well ahead of time and have no change. So I think that's part of the hate that he's getting. But in terms of just AI news, bringing it back, he's done so much sustainability with Tesla, with SpaceX. He's now bringing the web to all corners of the globe, to, every part of Africa, every part of South America, every, what people might say third world or poor country in the world now has access to internet if their government will allow it. So huge problems are getting solved by him. And then the number one, the biggest deal he might end up doing for humanity is Neuralink. And right now, Neuralink are basically allowing people who have completely lost the ability to talk or never had it through disability. They are having full-on intelligent conversations with those around them, family, friends, engaging, learning online. They're playing online games. They're playing games of chess. These people can't move. They can't communicate. They can't talk. And Neuralink is already fixing their lives and changing their lives. And I think just in general, where that business is going, you might be able to speak to more about any other details you've seen, but they look to be starting to, do things like restore vision, restore speech, allow the connecting the mind. Once they also plug in Grok and the AI, once they've got the connection into the brain and they connect that to artificial intelligence, and then soon you'll be able to plug it into their robots as well. It's just going to make, physical disability and mental disability, like not a thing of the past, but something that can be absolutely improved globally. Yeah.
It's incredible.
And I just think that's amazing.
It is. And so Neuralink at a high level is basically a computer chip that can plug directly into your brain. And then it can therefore do things on your behalf if your brain cannot communicate with things like your limbs, or you can't communicate with your mouth to speak. If your brain is still functioning, the computer is now acting as the interface. It's directly connected to your brain, and then it can go do those things for you. So I think the key insight here is this concept of what we call in computer science bandwidth. So when you have two computers that need to connect with each other over the internet, what is really happening there? It's a signal that gets sent to satellites, and then the satellites redirect it, and there's a lot of cables that run. So we think the internet just works, but there's a massive infrastructure that is out there that supports all of this. And so what bandwidth basically is it's the concept that you need to send information through some sort of medium, whether that's through waves in the air or whether it's through a physical cable. And when you have physical cables that, say, connect continents like the ones that run under the ocean, they're really thick, so they can send a lot of data through, and that is the bandwidth. And the concept of bandwidth also happens when we want to communicate with our phone. So at the moment, pre-AI, say, apart from, Siri, which didn't really work, you would have to, if I wanted to communicate with my phone, these were the restricting device. I had to type the message that I was thinking. So I was thinking at 1,000,000 miles an hour. I was restricted from getting that information into my phone by the thing in the middle, which is, it was very restricted bandwidth. And the bandwidth restriction was the fact that I couldn't type very fast. The very simple insight from Elon is, why don't we increase the bandwidth? Why don't we remove that barrier, and let's get a computer as close as we can to the thing that's producing the insight, which is our brain. And that's what he's done with this interface. And so it sounds very dystopian, a little bit creepy, that you've essentially got this computer chip directly plugged into your brain and sensing, and I don't know the details of how it works, but you're getting rid of that bandwidth issue. And it means now that we can get rid of these forms of having to communicate like by typing and go directly into the computer. And then that unlocks so many things. So not just the speed at which we can think and then get that into a computer and get it to act. Like you've said, it allows people who don't have motor control, who can't speak what they're thinking, to go directly into the computer, and the computer can do it for them. So it's massive. I'm really excited by this, and just to see people who have been so severely impaired be able to do tasks that they would have once been able to do because their brain is still there is super exciting. And yeah, this really opens up a lot of opportunities for a lot of people.
You pair that with AlphaFold, the CEO there, I think is Demesis, I always mispronounce his name, talking recently about them believing that they'd be able to figure out the sequences to basically remove all disease in the next 5 to 10 years. You pair that, I suppose, back-end research with Elon's interface, and you have a really positive view of the future, of what's possible. Like you said, you're removing your bandwidth issue there was your thumbs. For some people, it's their spinal cord. So, and as we translate this into robots and robots start to understand the physical environment, which we'll talk about in the robot rundown, but it's a really bright look at the future. And then just to counter that, I think something that I wasn't planning to talk about today, but we will, since it's the opposite. I saw a chart the other day. It's come out of Melbourne University, and out of the top, 40 economic nations in the world, Australia has the worst and most negative attitude to AI out of the top 40.
Sad.
Which is unbelievable. So this country is unbelievably skeptical, basically nervous, fear, see the opportunity, and think that it's, basically at where you and I are at. We're at like 1%, the top 1% of how people think about AI and the positive nature on it. But interestingly, India, China, and some of these other countries, they're seeing the opportunity. Now, everyone else would have thought, well, no, that's a cheap labor destination. They're the first people that are going to be replaced. But interesting, the psyche of a country that's developing, that's literally coming out of the mud, they're looking at this and going, how can we leverage it? How exciting. And we've been given everything in this country, everything. We are the lucky country. It's all sitting at our doorstep. It's all sitting under our feet. We're now been given a tool to, take us to the next level, and we've got the most negative spin on it. And once again, I think we spoke last week, I haven't heard a politician speaking about it publicly throughout the election. But wouldn't it be refreshing if Albo just rocked up and he's won, he walks out today and says, the future is this. This is the bright future. I can stop squabbling with Peter Dutton and all the negative crap. You've given me all the seats I need to make big decisions, and I'm going, and we're going to embrace AI in the future, and we're all going to enjoy a better future.
Yeah. And it's a complacency thing because we've had it easy. We've been able to dig things out of the ground and send them elsewhere and just do well. And we've got beautiful beaches and people want to invest in our property, and house prices have gone up for people who bought them cheap. Like, we have had it easy as a nation. And this gets me riled up as well. The fact that we don't care about innovating, that there is an investment here. This is why companies go and list on the NASDAQ, or they go and set up their operations over in the US or elsewhere, and why we lose innovation because it's not supported here. And yeah, so I agree. We've talked about the fact that there's some shining lights and there's a few shoots of innovation coming from Australia, and we have an opportunity to be experts in things like property tech and construction tech and other areas that we're good at. But if we don't invest in AI and innovation, then we are going to lose out. And you're totally right. These countries that have hunger, like where China was and still is, like India, they're just going to dominate. Like, when we go and look for software developers now, we are getting some really good software developers out of these Asian countries, and they're a whole lot cheaper. And it's no longer this conversation around, is it just because it's cheaper, or are we actually starting to see the quality get better? And if they start leveraging AI more than we do, the quality will get better, and then we'll lose our competitive advantage. So yeah, look, I mean, we've gone on a bit of a rant here. You can tell I obviously agree with your sentiment, but yeah, I would love to see Albo with that same speech.
Well, maybe for anyone listening, we'll dive into the segment, our AI how-tos. Now, when you've got one, I think we should call it Matt's hacks, or we previously have. And if I've got something to say, I'm gonna call it Tool of the Week, which is a famous old Aussie segment on the old I think it was Before the Game show. So we might have to get our producer to throw in that audio for the start of the segment, the Tool of the Week. But you spoke last week about NotebookLM and just how you've been using it, and and basically, for those that haven't heard, NotebookLM is a research tool that can then create a really large filter, because it's owned by Google, of information, of context, and distill it into multiple formats. One of them being a podcast, an AI directed podcast. The other is, just a normal summary with links to all the sources. Third is a chat with that summary. Fourth is a chat with that podcast where you go live as a third party within the podcast. That is an amazing experience. And then, sort of fifth is you can then put it into things like mind maps, takeaways, actionable lists. It's just an amazing tool, and you can basically research and digest any topic within that ecosystem on the one tool. One of the use cases that I got this week, actually, which is returning to the start of the show, was the feedback. So, because it's owned by Google, they've got obviously direct chat access to YouTube. We have 4 or 5 publicly available episodes on YouTube, and I think we have 2 or 3 under the rug that maybe when we're short on content or unavailable, we might just drop as a filler. But I was able to plug our previous episodes in and just say, give us an honest review of the positives and negatives of the show. And tell us where we can improve. But then the context, act like a world-class podcast producer and things like that. What was interesting, are you up to hear it, for starters? Are you up for the feedback?
I don't know. It's still early, man. I don't know if I'm ready for this.
So basically there was some kind words about how enthusiastic we are. That on the CEO front and in the technology space, we appear to know what we're talking about. We appear to have a good information diet. The banter was pretty good, and that we're actually giving people some actionable insights and takeaways.
Cool.
There's
That's nice.
Positive. Feeling good?
Hit me. Do I need to go get a drink?
No. The bad feedback was, potentially it can be a hard podcast to follow when you mix in a speech about Neuralink and then go straight to Chick-fil-A experiences. So I think that was early on, in fairness to us, but we have been told by the AI. And once again, I think everyone, prompting is so important. Don't ask for feedback on something. AI will tell you what you want to hear. Give it context and tell it the type of feedback you want, the honest assessment, the positive, the negative, and how to improve. Just like if you were going to getting some feedback of a boss or a mentor, a wife, you want actionable insights. So we've got to personally jump around a little less, give people a bit of a topic refresher before we talk about them. Interesting enough, it mentioned the Chick-fil-A story in a positive light, saying good banter, and in negative light, maybe figure out where to slide Chick-fil-A stories into the rundown.
Be better at segues.
Better at segues, which we are working on. But just another example of the use of NotebookLM. So you can use it for research on any topic. This is a conventional workflow. And I think you spoke about it a bit last week, but just let me reinforce it, because if you are not using NotebookLM, you are not leveraging AI enough. So any topic you can think of, any topic, you can give it some direction and actually drag in some existing like YouTube clips of people you're interested in, or you can tell it to go out and find you them. So say, go out and find me the top 10 pieces of content on this one subject. It will go out, it will find them. It'll then allow you to choose whether you want them to be included or not. So you might look at them and go irrelevant, and you might pick 6. It will then distill that into a written summary full of resources and a 5 to 20 minute podcast where the podcast host will deep dive on that subject. As you were then doing, because now you've removed the bandwidth of your thumbs issue, you're now listening to this content, you're digesting it while exercising, while you can do it. I've been wearing one earpod at home when I'm like bathing the children at this point, because whatever they're talking about is not functional. They're not adding any value to my day with the chat that they're providing, my 4 and 5-year-old girls. So one earpod in, they've learned to accept it's like an earring now. And I'm got deep research going on in a topic podcast while doing that, talking about multitasking. So you're then doing that. But then if you're not with someone, you can then interact. So you say, hold on a second, can we go back? Can you explain that one more time? So you're now having this full-on one-on-one learning experience with a teacher, or in this case, multiple teachers, and you can also challenge what they're saying to you. Like, hold on, where did you get that source from? Are you sure? I look at it this way. Can you please go, please refresh your thing? And then so now you're having this interactive learning session. And then at the end of it, you can then say, summarize this for me, give me the key takeaways following my interaction, and it'll take it into something like a mind map, which we'll show now. You can then, that's then an actionable task list that you plug into your task management system. Now the gap for me at the moment, and I'm going to ask you for some help here, is all of these things, all these tools that I use, and all of my notes and bookmarks on X and taking notes on the weekend, I still have to drag in those notes and put them into my Monday board. And then that's my task management, my task management system. Have you seen anything where you're taking in all this stuff potentially in your free time when you do your own creative thinking and your research time, and when you can get away out of the, running the business and try and learn? Have you got any tools or tips for people on how to make that workflow a bit more autonomous in terms of, okay, I've heard all this, I've got some takeaways. Now I need to plug that into a to-do list or make sure I crystallize it and act on it, as opposed to having just, 1,000 Apple notes that never get actioned.
Yeah. Okay, this is good. This is a good topic. I've got a lot of insights here. So let's get into some of Matt's hacks, hopefully some actionable insights. One thing that I want you to have a look at, Scotty, is a tool called MyMind. Now, it's not actually a new tool. I've had it for a few years now. And what it allows you to do is to take any snapshot. So you can even get a screenshot or something if you just need to remember it. Like maybe you see something on your X feed or someone sends you a message. You're like, wow, I need to respond to that. You can just screenshot it and you hit share and you share it to your MyMind app, and it goes in there and you essentially get this mind map. So it's for visual people who can get a mind map of all of the things that you need to do. And then you can go take that in other places. So that's one thing that you could do to quickly remember that you need to do something. And you can add a note to it too. So what I'll often do is I might even just take a, if I'm out somewhere and I remember something, I need to take a photo of that space that I'm in, the context, and then it gives you the option to add a note to it as well. So that could be one thing that you could do, that instead of just doing the Apple Notes, and you can do a voice note in there as well. So that'd be one thing I'd mention. This concept of not having to go into a particular app to remember where to put it first, like, the reason that you're not going into Monday right now and putting your task in next, you've got to remember to go into that app. You've got to find the area you put it. You've got to put it in the right section. And it's this concept of you need to organize first. And then by the time you do that, you've kind of forgotten the thing that you wanted to do, right? So, and that's why people resort back to Apple Notes. I think that in general, this needs to be flipped. Again, I'm going to call out Apple here. The fact that Apple hasn't done this with Siri is so freaking frustrating. Like, they had the opportunity to do this. Imagine if you just say to Siri, this is my note. This is what I want to talk about. And it automatically puts it into the right app for you. That's what should happen, but it doesn't happen at the moment. So we are seeing apps pop up for certain use cases here. We're actually building one for construction called Supersite, which allows you to do that. It's like the Snapchat for construction. You go out on site, you take a photo of something, you speak to the phone, and it organizes your notes for you. So there will be apps that pop up in lieu of Apple not doing this because they are lazy. The other ones that I want to talk about here is we've talked about note takers in the past. So everyone here who's been on a Zoom call has probably seen someone bring their note taker in, right? It comes up as, Matt's note taker, or it's Copilot or whatever. There's heaps of them now, and you can pick and choose. One that everyone should be using, and I've talked about it before, is called Granola. Download it now, get it on your computer, but also they just released their phone app. So what it will do, it'll link in with your calendar. And so if you do have a meeting, even if it's in person, you can turn on your Granola and it doesn't actually record. It just transcribes it straight away. So technically you don't really need to tell someone it's on. You probably should, as a matter of transparency, but it's not going to record someone's voice. It's just going to automatically transcribe the notes for you. So the fact that that's now available on your phone and your computer can really easily keep your notes in sync. Now, you still do need to remember to turn it on, but what I like about Granola compared to normal AI note takers is you can take your own notes at the same time. So if I'm sitting in a meeting, I turn my Granola on, I just take my notes inside of there, and at the end, I click Enhance. Then what it does, it takes the transcript and it takes my own notes, and it keeps my own notes in a separate section if I ever need them, but it enhances them in whatever way that I want. So it's got its auto mode, but you can set up templates. You could set up a template for a type of meeting that you have. Maybe it's a board meeting and it needs very formal minutes. That's a template you set up. You prompt it of how you want it. And when you click Enhance, you choose the board minutes template and it produces that for you. So that is a really cool tool. It's super cheap. And now that it's on the phone as well, I think that's been a real unlock. The final one that I want to call out, now this is just on a Kickstarter at the moment. I don't know if they're actually live, but I want to call out the concept has been really cool. It's called HiDoc, and we can put a link to this, but it's a voice recorder. The cool part about it and what it can do that I love, we're both sitting here with our AirPods. It's a little device you can keep on you. You can just take a note into it and then it will AI transcribe it. And so maybe you're driving, you just press the button, you need to remember to do something. That goes into the AI model. It remembers in the notes for later. But here's the cool part, and what I think the main pain point that they are solving for. I don't know even if you can buy them yet, but you can connect your AirPods into this device, and then the device connects to your phone. So anytime that you get a call, you could click record, and again, you don't have to tell the other person necessarily because you're not actually you're not recording their voice. It's just transcribing. So it's the same thing as taking down the notes as if you got a call and you're just a really good writer. So you can imagine for someone who's on the move, like yourself, being a business owner in construction, you'd be always driving and always on the road. Anytime you get a call with this device, you could just turn it on, or it could be configured to turn on automatically. It puts all of that into your model. And at the end of the day, you get a recap of all of the tasks that you need to do. And then you could plug in another tool to convert that into Monday. So I would say that we're probably not there yet for making this a seamless experience, but you can see where this is going. And again, I'm going to call it, I mentioned it, I can't remember when, but if Apple just did this, man, that would be such an unlock. At the moment, we're figuring out ways around it. But there's a couple of actionable insights in Matt's hacks. So the 3 ones, definitely download Granola. Check out a tool called MyMind if you're a visual learner. And if you want to be on the bleeding edge and you want to potentially piss away your money into this Kickstarter campaign that may not deliver, that's called HiDoc, not financial advice.
Well, I think, yeah, I agree. You did speak about Apple, and I've got the Limitless pendant arriving imminently. So I thought we'd have it by this show. I don't have it by next show. We're canning them, especially because I was trying to save the sponsorship dollars last week and you went early on canning them. But that could be the other little tool that we're talking about that makes it a seamless experience. I'd say, what if Apple don't get it together? Let's say someone like Google does, because they've got NotebookLM, they've got all these things, and they've got a phone, they've got the Android phone. I mean, what would it take? I had a staff member who's really intelligent the other day saying, I'm almost going to go. What would it take to almost get us across? Would it be something like that where they just go, anything that you do on a Google device then plugs into all of our tools, and you have this seamless workflow experience and livelihood experience? We're going to, whatever, get Strava started, because you've booked in a run or you've spoken about doing a run. We're going to remind you, we're going to plug that run into your Google Calendar and, blah, blah, blah. You've spoken about these things during the day. At the end of the day, do you want me to organize all of them for you and have all the tools ready to go for those meetings? Like if they did something like that, would that be almost enough for you to go, and Apple just has done nothing in the meantime over the last 3 months again? Is there something that's going to trigger a move, or do you think Apple's so embedded that we're just going to put up with a lack of innovation on their behalf?
I think that would get me very close. And look, I've been on either side here. I started in the Apple ecosystem. I went to Android, full on into that for about 5 years, had Android phones, and then I went back to iPhones and the Mac ecosystem. When it comes to Apple, the benefit is definitely the ecosystem play. So the fact that, and I am a bit of an Apple nerd, but I've got my Apple Watch, I've got my AirPods, I can set it up so that I can go for a run and listen to a podcast just with my AirPods and my watch and no phone. Now, yes, I bet all the Android fanboys and girls out there will say you can configure a particular watch, a Samsung watch or something to do that, or your Google Watch and your Google. But the fact is, the AirPods and the Apple Watch are the best and they work seamlessly. The other moat that I think Apple has that no one else has is the MacBook. The MacBook is incredible. You're a recent convert. We still need to teach you how to scroll. But it's an incredible device that Google...
By the way, I was just scrolling the wrong way through the show notes.
It's one setting, Scotty. We can fix this. Use some AI, my friend. But that's what Google doesn't have. So the benefit for Apple is this ecosystem, but that's starting to break down. Like an Android phone does work well with a Mac. You can download a separate app to do AirDrop and other things. But the ecosystem play is still really powerful, and they certainly still have the best, most sleek devices. So I'm still not about to move over. I do like the Apple ecosystem, but I think you're right. If Google solved that, this AI in everything, and it just did things for you, I think that would be enough. And knowing that Apple's probably not going to do it because of how they act.
Yes, and just before we move on, I think I heard somewhere, not confirmed, but maybe for next show if we're available on some research, I think Stripe has made some play at Apple's 30% margins on the App Store.
Yeah.
I'm probably not ready to talk about it yet, are you? But
yeah,
they're living off that revenue. I mean, that's the reason they haven't innovated, is because they've lived off 30% margin on the App Store.
Yeah, people don't realize how big this news is actually. So, if we've got some time, I'll recap it very quickly. There's a company called Epic Games who make a game called Fortnite, very popular game, huge company, and they've got a lot of other popular games. They essentially had a legal battle with Apple that's been going on for many years, and their whole thing is they didn't want to pay the 30% fee for when someone, say, bought something in the Fortnite game, such that they would have to lose the 30% to Apple. If someone was playing Fortnite on their phone, they want to buy I don't play Fortnite, but a sword or a new gun or something, then a transaction has to happen with Apple. Apple's policy is that the 30% has to be that. And so I believe how this came about is Fortnite said that it was anti-competitive. They should be able to put their own app store on an iOS device such that you can download the Epic games or other games from that app store. And then if you did that, you didn't have to abide by the app store rules of the 30%. And so there's been this massive legal case. Epic has actually won. And what it has meant is that you should, as an app developer, you can now accept a payment. You can kick someone out of the app or open up, say, a different window in the app. You can take a payment inside of the app and you don't have to pay the 30% app store fee. And you're right, that is a huge, huge loss of revenue for Apple. But someone like Stripe is so smart, they've basically said in a turnaround of 24 hours to all the app developers, as soon as this ruling was done, here is how you take payments with Stripe inside of an app. Turn this on today, save yourself the 30%, and Stripe only charges you 2.5%. So really smart by them. They either moved really fast or more likely they had this ready to go for 2 years and they were just waiting and they're like, here we go. This is finally the moment. And they released it. So it is huge, huge news for Apple in a bad way, but for consumers in an excellent way. And Stripe is capitalizing.
I might have to check the Stripe secondary market after hearing that.
might have overtaken Mr. Ad
Not advice. Figure. Just a personal note that would be my note taker if I had one, but I'll convert it into a Monday to do. Look, it'll be shorter this week, but let's jump into the robot rundown where the rubber meets the road. And also, just a note, the title of Robot Rundown, we're also going to cover anything that's physical AI. So in the worlds of atoms and bytes being, the software environment and atoms being the world that we live in, physical AI is having a huge 12 months. And I'll finish off the show with why I think that is. But for now, just some really cool news, retail experience and stuff that affects you and I, being construction and construction tech. We'll share some photos. What's happening now that I'm seeing is the general purpose robot is coming. But for now, we have all these single purpose robots that are getting really good. And if you broke them down, and if you were way too early in the early adoption phase, you could basically have 15 because there's folding clothes robots, there's dishwasher robots, basically every household chore you can imagine. There is a team, a small startup training a robot to do that one thing. And there'll be some video showing now of some of those things happening. And then as we dip our toe into the construction side, I'm seeing a lot of singular trade robots. There are robot tilers, robot concreters, robot roofers, robot excavators. So we're now at the stage, which is a really interesting stage because general purpose is the end goal. And then past general purpose, I think the end goal is that what we spoke about earlier about being better than everyone at everything, like it can do everything really well. But I think it's really cool. I'm starting to see a lot of these single purpose, but doing it. And they're things that people don't want to do. So, that seems to me to be really cool.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept. We see the same thing in software. Like you've got these platforms that try and do a lot. Think of a CRM, think of a Monday.com. And then you've got these point solutions that do individual things really well. And it's a balance. Like you probably don't want to have to get 100 robots to do your household chores. But you also probably don't want to have 4 humanoid robots rummaging around your house, just doing everything when you could have a little robot that's just going to take your toast out for you and butter it. Like that would be pretty cool. So it's an interesting concept. I just, like you say, I love that physical AI and robotics is having its moment. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out, how general purpose the robots get versus these small individual task niche robots.
So what if we looked at general purpose as in software, the platform? So what if we looked at it as at Tesla, at Figure and Unitree as the general purpose robot platforms, and they then acquire all these single purpose robot companies and they plug in that dexterity and that finely tuned model and add it to the intelligence or the brain of the general purpose. Do you think that we could potentially see that as a way to have these general purpose robots be very good at specific tasks?
Yeah,
Or is that something that could happen?
I really like that. And it's like it's like creating the robot ecosystem. So yes, it might be, the bigger general purpose companies buying for the technology, but it might even just be buying to create an ecosystem like we talked about with Apple. So you could imagine if the humanoid robot that's in your house, that is your general task doer, that's your robot that's going to do most of the tasks around the house, you just need one of them. If they are integrated and it knows about all of these single focus robots that are in your house, they could do tasks together. The areas that while the humanoid robot is cooking, it can actually instruct the washing folding robot to go and start doing that. And then it can go take it away for it. Or it can move these smaller robots around because it is integrated in. So I think that is a really interesting concept that I hadn't properly thought about that could happen. But I do think that there will be a lot of acquisitions in this space. Like you said, the bigger players, just like it happens in software, buying up the smaller technology, and maybe the purpose though, or the outcome will be that creating that ecosystem such that you can just go to an Apple equivalent of robotics. Maybe that is Figure AI, and they can just deck out your home, or maybe that's Elysium. They can deck out your home with the certain things that it needs to be fully automated.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think to wrap up, just to, and we got him at the start of the show and I want to get him at the end, and this whole, why this robot space is getting so exciting. I believe that the reason that the robot space has been exciting for the past 12 months is because Jensen from Nvidia turned his mind to it 18 months ago. Like I said previously, if you watch the Nvidia sort of their roadshow once a year, if you geek out and digest that, there's some pretty dense content in there. What they're talking about usually becomes mainstream about 18 months later. They, at their last one last year, spoke about robotics, and everyone are still listening to people, you and I talk on the street. People think we're a little bit crazy when we talk about robotics. And you made the prediction about robots in the home this year. That's what AI sounded like 2 years ago to people. And then, now 2 years later, but it all starts at that hardware layer and at that chip layer. And for it to get to the chip layer, he has to think about it 18 months before to get the Nvidia engine room going to produce the product that then, everything is an Nvidia layer these days, an Nvidia wrapper. So, I just think he turned his attention to this space. He's created the Omniverse there, which is the physics-based, digital playground where these robots are being trained, where the brains are being formed of these robots, almost, prior to whenever the fabrication of them happens. They're being trained in this NVIDIA alternate universe that's based on our physics. And he's creating the technology for these robotic startups and the big robot players to leverage and get it towards our home. And I think he did the same in gaming. I think when, he turned his attention to gaming changed forever. He did the same with AI. He saw what AI could be and started fine tuning their product roadmap to develop AI. And then when ChatGPT dropped, the Nvidia share price went through the roof because everyone did the research, like, where does this technology come from? And everyone realized they're leveraging the GPUs. So I just think, the world's being changed by a couple of people, meaning I think him, probably Elon as well. And Sam, like I said, I think is stepping into that Steve Jobs space of that user experience, because I don't think either Elon or Jensen are great at, retail user experience. So it's just cool that we're in an age where we've got our new icons. And just another shout out for him that I think I can see the conversations you and I are having now. How did we get here? I watched that conference 18 months ago where he said, we're going to do robotics, and everyone thought he was crazy.
Yeah. It is pretty cool to think that so much of what is around us today is shaped by the visionary leadership of so few. And I guess a note to leave it on, to ponder on, that I think about is like, if these people weren't around, would someone else have stepped up to the plate? Would it have happened 6 months later, 10 years later? And this is like a really interesting concept to think about, because you're right, the future is being shaped really by only a few key individuals. And we can ponder on that one until next time.
Yeah, I'd finish on, if you're ever thinking about what to do in life, think, if I didn't do it, would it get done? And that's always a good North Star to focus you in on. Keep trying no matter how hard something is.
Some sage advice to finish on. Hopefully NotebookLM's review of next podcast. We'll talk about wisdom and not just banter. But it's been great, Scotty. Another great episode.
Also, absolutely. Thanks, mate.
Good
See
to
you next
chat.
time.
Bye.